Good evening. This is the City of Victoria Park and Recreation Committee meeting being held on January 22nd. We're starting at 6:50 p.m. so we can have a full quorum, which we now have. We're going to, first item is call to order, which consider done. And the next item will be the a roll call of members, and I'm John Carlson, Chair of the Park and Recreation Committee. Larry Schulz, if you want to just say present.
Present.
Mary Larson, Mary is not here this evening. Christian Pedersen.
Present.
Claudio Gruppetti.
Present.
Amber Huttner, Amber is not here this evening. Grace Tumala.
Present.
Thank you. Jeanette June is not here this evening. Judy Iverson
Present.
and Kevin Roberts is not present. So we do have a full quorum, and also obviously Park and Recreation Director Ann Menke is with us as our staff lead. And then we're happy to have Council Member Tom Gregory with us this evening. Welcome, Tom.
Yes, Chairman Carlson, the mayor is newly appointed to be the liaison, and he apologizes. He could not make it this evening. He had a prior engagement that was set up before he learned he was going to be liaison, so he needed to keep that, and he asked me to sit in tonight, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tom Gregory has been, Council Member Gregory has been our liaison for, I don't know how long, Tom, at least a
Off
year.
and on, I mean, it was.
Last two.
The first year.
2 years now
second
already.
year, 2 years.
And it's been of definite value to the committee, and hopefully you have found it of value as well to have you
been
be a part of this group. So we're happy to have you with us tonight, and we look forward to having our mayor be a part of the liaison in the future.
Very good, thank you.
And we appreciate his coordinating that out with you.
Yes.
So that we have that presence. The next item of business will be the approval of the minutes from our prior meeting, which was held November 18, 2019, and it's in your packet. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? We have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nay? The minutes are approved. Next item is number 4 is petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints from citizens, committee members, or staff. Do any of you have any items? And I see we do not have anyone from the public here tonight. And for those of you who will watch this video, we do want you to know that your input is always welcome, obviously not only to the City Council directly, but to the Park and Recreation Committee. And you can do that by
I'm just letting them go.
You can do that by attending the meeting and also by contacting Ann, our representative.
I have a few things from people in the area around the Victoria Recreation Center, people that I've corresponded with. A lot of excitement about the new park, obviously. I've had a couple questions about the dog park situation, which brought up some things about Wassermann Park and access and what we're going to do with dogs there. The reason being behind this is Lake Minnewaska Dog Park is now free. It's a mess. You can't find a parking spot, and there's 10,000 dogs in there all the time. What that has done is also put more pressure on the Victoria Dog Park, which is not run by us, but is something that our community uses a lot. It's Three Rivers Park District. So moving forward with the Wassermann Park and the access and the availability of the right to walk a dog there, we're going to have a lot of that. And I've had some people say, is it going to be an open dog park? Is it going to be, are we going to have people able to run their dogs free? No, no, and no. But I think we should make it as dog friendly as possible and possibly provide cleanup stations. That was one of the things. Anyway, just to think about going forward. The other thing was excitement about the paving of Lions Park parking lot. And a couple of folks asked about the availability of resurfacing of the basketball court there. I know we talked about it in the past, and something just came to mind when we were going through it is there a chance that we could create that or make that basketball court or part of that basketball court available for outdoor pickleball?
It's not the right size.
Okay. Just one of the other things. So anyway, other than that, last couple months, a lot of excitement about the new park off of Wassermann, and that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, Christian. Other items? And then as it relates to the item on the basketball court, I think your point there was, one of the points was that it would be useful to get it resurfaced. Is that what you were?
Yeah, resurfaced, and then I know that Jeanette and some others have talked about trying to create an outdoor pickleball court area, and is there a way to possibly implement that at Lions Park in the same way? Okay. Something to think about when that piece of property or item comes up again.
Okay.
That's all.
Well, we all know that pickleball is very popular, and so I think it's,
And Jeanette will be behind it, and I thought she'd be here tonight.
obviously, we won't be processing that tonight, but it definitely
No.
is a distinct possibility for the future. On the Wasserman Park topic of dogs, I think that's, have we discussed that previously, either staff or our committee? And I don't recall that we have.
So within the city park rules, dogs are allowed, but they must be leashed. And then, of course, people pick up after themselves. So certainly we can monitor the use that park gets once we open it, and hopefully the responsible dog owners will pick up after themselves without us having to put in pickup stations. But it's something we can monitor.
I was just looking at a couple of garbage cans, but
Oh yeah, we'll have garbage cans in the park. That will happen. But we have a lot of neighborhoods. What we've done is that the HOAs have paid for and will take care of the doggy bag stations, and also they come with doggy bag and a garbage can. So they have purchased those, and we have put them in, and they monitor it for them. So when we get out into the trailed areas that are in HOAs, that's what we've done in the past. So, but yes, definitely we'll have garbage cans within the park.
Well, at the minimum, I think it's something the staff will monitor.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and I think you answered the question, which is that people can bring their dogs into any of our parks, including that park. So is that helpful, Christian?
yes, I just think there's going to be a lot more, or there could be a lot more pressure on it, or even all of our parks, based on some of the other things that have happened. Anyway, thank you.
Good. Yeah, and it could be on that park in particular once it's up and running. I'd like to also, a couple items I'd like to bring up. One is at the last city council meeting, 3 of our committee members who have been a part of this new formed garden club were recognized, along with other volunteers who have been involved with the city. Amber Huttner, Jeanette June, and Mary Larson. 3 of our committee members were recognized for their work in initiating the garden club and beautification efforts. And Tom Gregory, you were present for that, and so just wanted to call them out in this meeting.
Certainly, yes. They were part of a large group of volunteers that donate a lot of time and effort into helping out our city, and it's wonderful.
So we'll be hearing more from that group, so shout out to those 3 individuals. Also, if you take a look at the winter Victoria Recreation, or City of Victoria Park and Recreation Winter 2020 booklet, if you've seen that, one of the cool things that we've talked about on page 9 is we're going to have 20 new garden plots added in 2020. And that was something that we've talked about previously. And Ann, do you want to just briefly update the group on that? And I know they're not ready to be for signups and so forth, but.
So yeah, last year we had fairly lengthy discussion on community gardens and garden clubs, and so the women that you noted tonight that started the club have taken off, and so I contacted Holy Family, and there's an area out kind of on the north side of their property that really doesn't get any use, and so we contacted them, and they agreed to allow us to put some additional gardens back in that area. So we have purchased the material, and we'll be constructing those in the spring, up and running in summer of 2020. Information will be going out to the general public. I'm hopeful sometime this week or early next on the process with which you get, I can reserve a garden, so.
Because of the garden plots that we have that are over by the recreation center have been
Full
full.
for a number of years, yep.
And what's the cost again for
$50.
$50?
Yes.
So, great. And then also about the parking of Lions parking lot. As a member of the Lions, I can tell you the Lions are very, very happy about that as well, and think they know it'll be a benefit and a long time coming, and so they're very excited about that the council is able to provide funding for that to get paved.
And that's on our agenda too as well.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to move on to old business, and the first item is going to be Marsh Lake Road and Trail update. Ann?
Yep, sure. So as you guys are well aware, the Marsh Lake Road project it was a lengthy process from it being a county road to the council getting neighborhood input into the design. So back in early, I want to say I think it was even 2018, the project started popping up, and so the council directed staff to consider 3 different road designs. The original one was a county road with median, and the council finally decided to throw that one off the table. So the other one was to come back with a 9-ton road, city street, with trail, and then a 9-ton road without trail. So at the December 16th meeting, the council directed staff to move forward with the final design of the road being a 9-ton road without trail. And Councilmember Gregory is here this evening that I'm sure that he will be happy to talk more about, but there was significant expense added to the project with trail because of a lot of retaining wall, possibly grading into people's yards. So it was decided to move forward with just a roadway with no trail. So I am happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to update you guys on that. If there's any questions, either Council Gregory or I could speak to them.
When would that actually be done?
This year is the plan.
So we had talked about, at least this committee had talked about the importance of trying to get trails put together whenever new roads came up and the opportunity presented itself. If it was going to cost more because of the grading and that, won't it cost more also when we do it later? It seems like we're kind of getting away from what we had hoped to do, so we won't end up in the future with another place where the trail isn't completed and it ends up being more expensive later. I don't know what maybe help us understand the long-range plan.
Well, there was significant amount of discussion around this and whether it's been a long process. But certainly a trail is very expensive. I'm not sure exactly I forget the numbers, but I'm not sure, but I'm thinking $1 million in that neighborhood. We're still kind of working with the county on whether or not this will someday be a county road. It's not set in stone yet that this will always be a city road. The county still wants to keep that in their comp plan, that this at some point will be a county road. So it's a difficult decision. And the thought process, there's some thought around building it now. We would end up with a disconnected trail, which we have a number of those already, and at significant cost to connect the existing trail, to spend $1 million to have another disconnected trail. We just didn't feel that we wanted to spend the money to go as the city option without the county. We're already in the 1.4 million, which is going to stretch our budget the way it is. And so, long story short, yeah, it's probably going to cost more in the future, but the council felt at this time we just couldn't move forward with the trail. And I don't know if that satisfies your answer or not, but a lot of discussion back and forth on it. 2 members were definitely for moving forward with the trail and 3 were not, so. And if you want to throw in anything more than that, I don't know, it was a difficult decision.
It was, and it was challenging to try to work through the, trying to create a road in that section that would accommodate existing traffic and future traffic, and basically it's going, in most places it's going right over the existing roadway. So and again, when we start talking about trails, moving forward with some of these gaps, we have similar challenges in that they're rural section roads and they've got road ditches. And, so when you look at the numbers, the roadway only was 2.1, and then the roadway with the trail was 3.5 million. It's a significant cost that it certainly was a challenging decision that the council had to make. So
is there going to be consideration for down the road, whether the county gets involved or not? Will there be consideration for a trail, at least now in the planning, so
Yes.
we can eliminate future problems because we just put a road in and we didn't take
Yeah.
into account
Yeah,
where
so,
the trail
yes.
might go?
So as developments come in, and that's generally what we do is incorporate the trail system within those developments as they move forward. So we'll always look for opportunities to get trail in as we can.
Right. And I guess my question also along that line is, I think that's really good, but in the design of the road itself, so we don't end up in where the road comes to a place where it's going to end up being something we never can afford.
In this case, no, that won't happen.
What won't, we won't,
we-
we
within the ro-
won't find ourselves in that situation.
Within the road design itself, we will not be looking to put trail or to put a future trail in with this road design that was selected.
I think as it relates to the road itself, the amount of time is unbelievable that went into getting to the decision point, and the trains left the station on that. That's a given. As it relates to the trail, it would be 1.4, it would add 1.4 to put that in. And I think as it relates to our comprehensive plan, think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent is to have the comp plan changed so that it would be in as a city road, and that the city road would not be changed to a county road for at least 20-some years. I just want to be sure I'm correct with my information
That's-
on that.
Pretty much where we are at. I learned today that there is still some further discussions, and those may come up. But from a practical standpoint, I would say that from Victoria's standpoint, the 20-year outlook is that it would remain a city road.
And then in the meantime, I think the thing that we have to be aware of as a city is any safety concerns as the area continues to grow, not having a trail there and with the type of road that it is. So there is that element that will become more an issue as it potentially could be used more because it's paved by bike users.
But it will be a 35-mile-an-hour road, which
Okay.
isn't, it's not very, it's somewhat compatible with bike traffic to that extent, but you're right. I mean, it's difficult, and we will have challenges, and there'll be some safety concerns. But I think the lower speeds will help mitigate that to a certain extent.
Yeah. And then the intent is if it becomes a county road in the future, then if there would be a trail put in with the new road, that this wouldn't be a exclusive city expense item. Potentially, it would not be a city expense item.
Well, there's always cost sharing when we work with the county, so they put in a much bigger road and much more expensive road, and we share cost in that.
Right.
So this going without the county isn't necessarily a cost saver or an increase in cost. It's just a different type of road.
I think, and it's good for the committee to be aware of this. It is what it is. I don't know that we can bring value to this topic other than just knowing about it, because it is what it is.
One question for Ann on the depiction of the road that's in the documents, Ann. They show ditches on both sides of the road, and then it looks like some flat land or horizontal land. Is that pretty representative of what it will be?
Yes.
So to Larry's point, on one of those shoulders on the other side of the ditch, potentially, can there be just even a gravel trail,
It's private property.
both sides?
Yes.
Okay.
One side doesn't belong to the city. It belongs in Lake Town Township, and the other side is in private property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
One question, Ann, would be as it relates to, there's some property on both the north side and the south side. And as that property is developed, is the intent that there would be a trail put in once those particular parcels are developed, that the trail would be put in, or is that to be determined if that would be the case? And I don't
know for sure, but I think the intent is, as properties develop, especially on the larger parcels, is to notify the county, get their input, and then work together with property owners to figure out exactly what kind of right-of-way we will need for a future trail, future county road. So there still will be cooperation with the county when development does occur.
One of the aspects of the fact that it was going to cost 1.4 million to just put a trail in on just that one. How long is that section? It's not a long section of road.
For the whole road?
Yeah.
I think it's about 1.5.
Yep, yep.
1.5 miles.
Yeah, so, basically 1.4 million for a 1.5 mile trail. There was discussion about the fact at the council level that for 1.4 million, gosh, we could fund a couple of these trail disconnects out there. And so we have never really had any discussion about the idea of looking into, obviously with the help of staff, and obviously without the authority, ultimate authority of the council to act on anything like this, would be to ask the staff to take a look at what, beyond the trail fund that we have, which we're putting more into every year. But, that's a very limited of funds and goes, isn't even enough to fund one trail at this point. We're trying to raise enough to fund Bavaria. But what if we were at least to investigate what would it look like if we were to say, hey, let's bond for $1 million X? How could we, what trails would we be looking at, and how would that look at from a financial standpoint? And to ask the staff to kind of take a look at it for us, not to bring anything to the council, but to at least, take a look at it.
Well, our strategic plan does incorporate 1 to 2 trail connections, and that's going to be in excess of $1 million. So I'm not sure what more we could add to that goal or that vision. Okay, I don't know. I just don't know where to go with that, because trail connections are expensive, and we're trying to get there. We're doing, we have limited funds to work with, and part of the strategic plan is to see if we can put a couple of these together within the next 2 years.
When John asked the question, the thought that came into my mind, it's basically a question: is there a way of accelerating the trail connection with additional funds? But that's, right now the plan is there, and that's probably another discussion to have at another time. But I like the idea, because personally, connecting. When I saw that we weren't spending the extra money on Marsh Lake, my immediate thought was, sure be nice to be able to spend that 1.4 somewhere else on trail connection.
But it's not like we're saving the money.
It's like we don't. Exactly.
We didn't have the money in the first place. So, okay.
I just think I don't think we're going to, I don't know if we're going to go anywhere with that. I just wanted to make the point that the council in the arguments or discussion had said, hey, if we had, for the 1.4 million, if we were to approve this for 1.4 million, gosh, we could get a lot more bang for the buck if we were to take a 1.4 million dollar amount and put it towards some of these other trail areas. And what could we do with that to accelerate it? I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee and see if you guys had any thoughts on it.
Just going backwards in time, this group approved or recommended a city street with trail, correct? Like 9-0 as far as a vote. Is that correct?
For Marsh Lake?
Yeah.
I believe so, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe so.
Okay. I just was curious on that. And obviously we don't deal with the funds and the financial aspect, and we're going to be swayed towards keeping the trail connection systems put together. So it would be with us to be that way, but I was just curious. Thank you.
I think it's an option that should be not totally forgotten. The idea that there is, if you can bond for 1.4 million for Marsh Lake, maybe there's an opportunity to bond for existing trail priorities that are already on our priority list. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, so I won't
Yeah, let's move on.
go on with that. What's that?
I said, yes, let's move on.
Okay.
Got some stuff.
Yep, we got some stuff. So the next item is going to be 5.2, which is the Bavaria Trail update. And this is a key item for us this evening, and there's an action item tied to it. So, Ann?
Sure, thank you. At the last meeting, we kind of talked about I brought everybody up to speed on the Bavaria Trail. As you are aware, Bolton and Mink provided two scenarios for the trail, one including the trail along an urban section, and one include a trail along an existing rural section road. With those costs, some really generalized costs without doing hardly any engineering. It's mostly spot looking. So we have always kind of maintained that east and west sides we will continue to look at. Also, the Arboretum study, which is looking at 5 Bavaria rolling acres, they were also looking at trail connection from 5 down to 18 as part of their study. So I want to just kind of run through those locations for you. And this is the south end. So the Bavaria Trail, Highway 5 being here, County Road 18 or 82nd Street being here. The Arboretum study is actually looking at this and had provided some real general layouts, and also had an open house back in December, and I think they had, I don't know, 7, I can't remember how many participants they had, but looked at and received opinions or feedback on both sides of the road, just like we have been doing. And then I want to move back to the section, this is County Road 18 or 82nd Street down to 86th Street, that we also have been looking at for trail. Kind of gives you an outline. So this was the feedback from the open house. I guess they had 115 attend. So just like the rest of the world, we are pretty close in where people think the trail should go. It's not quite 50-50, but the feedback was given, and they had a pretty good turnout with it. So again, not real strong evidence that would point to which side of the road it should go on, but I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. One of the things that I will be working on is getting an RFP put together for engineering services that would really lay out the trail, put the specifications together, put out bidding documents for it, with the hope of pulling all this together and being able to go out for bid in the late fall or early winter of 2021. One of the opportunities that we do have, and I want to just go to a little PowerPoint here for you guys. One of the opportunities we do have is there are DNR local grants available. This year, there's about $150,000, or the grants pay up to $150,000. The pot of money is actually about $850,000 available, but at least we can get a grant in, and hopefully be successful. And the worst that can happen, I guess, is no. But one of the things for you guys, I'd really like to get some feedback tonight, and hopefully come up with a recommendation on which side of the road that we should actually be working on. So I kind of laid out the project schedule, because I'm going to need some direction from this group and the city council on a final east-west route, especially for a grant application. So with that, I would like you guys to have some discussion, and recommend that at least we submit a grant application for the Bavaria Road, and then hopefully make a recommendation on which side you would like to move forward with, so.
And the numbers that you showed, were those for Highway 5 to 82nd Street or Highway 5 all the way to 86th?
These are all the way from 5 to 86th Street.
Okay.
So when we start talking about, you know, I don't want to go back to Marsh Lake Road, but when you look at 1.5 miles, you're looking at about $100,000 per mile of trail when you consider the final product. So, but yeah, one side, this was done as a urban section, or sorry, a rural section up to an urban. So it's rural to urban is that the cost difference. And these numbers do not take into consideration any private property impacts, if there are any. Because it's possible that we would need temporary easements for grading purposes, because we'd probably be looking at some retaining wall along these sections. So it's a wide range, just on first glance, so.
Last time we talked about this briefly, the sense I walked away with is that the east side was going to be significantly cheaper than the west side, but looking at these numbers, they seem to be pretty close.
Yes, I would say that they're pretty close. I have to get back to my,
We were talking about how the residents were more interested in on the west side because it was adjacent to their,
I don't know if the residents spoke about that. We haven't really spoken to the residents, except they've been invited to the open house. For our purposes, I've not spoken to any of the
Okay.
residents. I think it's been, this group, the open house group, it's kind of there's pros and cons to both sides. I can certainly tell you that. When we start looking at, I'll get down to we'll start at Highway 5. So this is obviously south. So this yellow sections are pieces of trail that are done. So we've got some trail here. We also have some trail here as part of this development. This piece from Highway 5 down to 78th Street was actually graded in as part of the Highway 5 construction that occurred many years ago. So this is ready to go. When we start looking at private property, it's this section in here. And when we went out on our tour, you guys saw what it looked like. There's landscaping right next to the ditch. There's ditch all the way along. So that becomes a challenge. You're probably looking at temporary grading onto people's property with retaining wall. Here we hit the Public Works building, and there's no reason we can't swing up into Public Works, actually, if we can make the grades work. And then we get to the tree farm, and we have had conversations with the tree farm a number of years ago that they were supportive of the project. And then we get into Arboretum property again, which, I know we've got their support. So dollar amounts and grading, it looks a little bit better condition than we have over here. When we go from South 18 down to 86th Street, again, we have this little section of trail done on the east side or west side, and on the east side, this was a new development that came in, so we've got trail here. If you look at a lot of the section along the west side or the east side over here has some urban section roads, but we do have some landscaping, minimal amounts of landscaping. We do have some overhead utilities that might become a factor. So I think when you look at the east and west sides, there's a little more trail to construct on the east side than there is on the west. And I think that's what plays into the cost differences when you look at the overall cost on it.
So if I understand what you said, it appears that while there's more trail on the east side that would need to be done,
Yes,
there's probably less cost potentially for private landowners, land acquisition or right-of-way, and less hassle to homes that are already on the west side.
less impact on the east. than
Right.
Yes,
Overall, so
yes.
if we try to look at the total cost, and I know there's no way to come up with an exact number, it would appear just from the information that you shared that the cost of land acquisition and community upheaval would be greater if it was on the west side than the east side.
I don't know if I would say.
Well,
I don't know if I
upheaval's
would
not
use
the
the
right
words
word.
upheaval.
Well,
We would definitely have some challenges in here. On this side. Not saying that they can't be overcome. And on the east side over here, it's ditch, and landscaped. Here, here it wouldn't be too bad. Here, it's ditch and landscaped. So we'd be looking at, my guess is we'd be looking at retaining wall here and through here. Which makes the cost go up significantly when you gotta put in retaining wall.
As we saw with Marsh Lake.
Yes.
And is
Yep.
the retaining wall is not factored into the
No,
cost numbers?
no.
So,
It's pure construction
of the
of,
trail itself.
of gravel and trail.
Okay, so
Yes.
with that said, it still appears to me that the east side in the long run is gonna be a cheaper alternative, with less number of property owners to deal with.
And I do envision that at some point in time, there will be trail on both sides of the road. But in order to get something done, I need to have a little bit more direction from you guys on where I should focus my energy. And,
When you talk about easement for temporary grading, is there a cost associated with?
yes,
getting that?
generally, sometimes there is and sometimes there's not. We really try to get grading easements that, for nothing. If we have to go in and buy property, that becomes a cost.
Is there, right now, when you looked at the trails, it looks like, what was it, $100,000?
That's with a new road.
Yeah, is there a way of getting a ballparkish number to just get kind of order of magnitude on what that easement grading retaining wall could be? Because if it turns around and increases at 50%, it's different
Yeah,
than if it
so-
increases 5%.
Yeah, so the next step in the process will be to get engineering, but if you want both sides done, the cost will go up significantly to try to get, because they're gonna have to go in and do survey work on both sides of the road, identify right-of-way, identify obstacles, and it will take it will take longer to do, than if we picked one side.
Yeah, I wish-
The other option that I guess that we have is to pick a different trail.
Correct.
You know? There were,
Say, Ann, could you just kind of take a step back and kind of talk about, a little bit about the difference between urban and rural sections?
Sure.
And how much do we have in place? And is it urban or rural that we already have in place on the west side? And what would be your preference to urban or rural on the east side?
so if you look at, I mean, and these pictures aren't maybe, I don't know if these pictures came from here or not. So when we talk about a rural section road, generally it is gravel. This is actually the existing berm here. So you've got the road, you have a ditch system that carry gravel shoulder, a ditch system that carries the water, and then you have a berm with a bunch of landscape on it, trees that, if this was in my backyard, I'd be a little concerned about that coming down if we had to go up on top of the berm with a trail. So what we have to do in these cases, you have to figure out, this is a perfect place to put a urban section road, which would have curb, gutter, and a way to convey the water, because you can't put a trail down in this ditch, because that's where the water goes, and the trail won't last in a ditch system like that. So you either have to put pipe in to build it up, or you have to go somewhere up into this area. So here, for example, is an area that is basically right here. It's an urban section road. It's got curb and gutter and trail, or curb and gutter and stormwater. And it's got a little bit of a slope way back into the property line back here that really doesn't, you've already got your conveyance of water taken care of here. So you're looking at ultimately some minor grade work here versus here. Because you can go in and put the trail in a lot of the sections, especially in here. This is curbed and guttered, and it's got everything that you need to go. You just need to come in and put a trail in here.
Looks like you have to move some utility poles.
Yes, and you've got some areas that, and this is a rural section road again, where in this spot, those are culverts that go under the driveway. Again, the conveyance of water that you have to deal with to try to put a trail anywhere along this road, where you don't in this. You probably have to move mailboxes or signs or maybe some utilities. A lot of this area, though, I think we can fit it in between the utilities and the street, so.
If you go urban, you're basically putting pipe where the ditch is
System
now.
is, yes.
But,
So you put curb, gutter, ditch. That's why the price goes up, because you have to put in all those utilities
yeah, I mean, there's judgment calls on this.
and improvements.
Because it's like, okay, someone could say, well, do an urban, if you're gonna do it right, put it to
Yeah.
an urban.
And this, basically, this run from here, and this is back up on the northern section from 5. This section from here to here was all done in suburban sections, so it's got the curb, the trail's graded in, and then from here, it's all rural section road. And from here, on the other side, is rural section, basically this whole way, but trail was put in as part of the Applewood development, so the trail sits up higher, and they graded the ditch closer to the road, trail on the other side of the ditch when this development went in.
The current trail that we have, I think it's 3 Rivers, are those considered rural trails? Just like along the backside of the city?
In Three Rivers Park District, yes. They would, I mean, they were graded to accommodate a trail in Three Rivers, where these against streets or within streets are graded street trail.
Per mile, is there maintenance cost, long-term maintenance, is there a significant difference of putting in paved trails versus gravel trails?
There are certainly pros and cons with gravel versus paved. Gravel trails, they tend to spread out and push out over time.
Right.
So you've got to keep adding gravel and grooming the gravel, and with a paved surface, if you build them properly, they're probably less maintenance, but they're going to require crack sealing when the freeze and thaw cycle hits in the wintertime. They're going to need to be seal coated, and at some point in time, they will need to be overlaid with a thin overlay. You know, but that's a 25-year process, just like a street is.
Is a non-urban basically gravel? Is that,
The road, well, the shoulder, a rural, when I talk about rural section, I'm talking about a rural section road.
okay.
That does not include curb and gutter. And
Are we talking about with either one of these, whether we have a urban or non-urban, that the trail would be paved?
yes,
Okay. Does the,
yes, sorry if I confused somebody
no,
about
no,
that.
does the Arboretum Transportation Plan, which this, at least part of this section would involve, would not involve the part between 82nd Street and 86th Street?
Correct. This only contemplates improvements from 5 down to 18. So their goal, obviously, is to look at this intersection and then this intersection.
Yep. But this cost estimates, rough estimates,
That's
Based
not
on-
from them, that's from our engineering
and
firm.
that's based on Highway 5 all the way to 80, down to
86th.
86th.
Yes, yep.
As it relates to the transportation plan area, does that plan at this point inform what the preference would be, east or west? Or is that really one of those things where,
Here you go. There you go.
hey, city, do what you want to do?
5248.
Yeah.
I mean, the people say they want it on the east side, which is the easy side to do it, but I don't think they really want it on the east side. I think the west side's the smart way to go, but it's way more difficult, and it will end up being more expensive with the retaining walls. I mean, there's just no question about it. But when you think about a non-link trail, you just need to go to Applewood, and all of a sudden your trail stops. Or you come from the new development up here, what is it called, Madeline Creek, and the trail just stops. There is no trail over here that's not connecting. We're just putting a new trail in to cover up the Band-Aid in the gaps. Is the new trail a better option? That's what we have to kick around. I'd say no, but we all know where I stand on it,
Well,
which is the west side versus the east, but
So just to talk about that a little bit, when we talk about connecting trails, and crossing, I mean, you still have to cross here to here at 5 for now. But when you, I guess I can pull up my,
I'm just watching your mouse
all right, let me pull up, the GIS.
mouse arrow, actually.
Let's get up to here.
I mean, if the people want it to be on the east side, go for it, but I don't think they do. Maybe they do.
I think we're all
So,
speaking
yeah,
for a
so
lot of other
I'm
people.
just pulling up, I'm pulling up the trail routes as we speak. So, I mean, all of the people that live in this area, that trail connection gets them up to the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. I mean, basically every person in here. It also connects, and I know it's of regional significance, but it connects the Minnesota River Bluff all the way to the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail from Chaska all the way up. It's not a very good map, I'm sorry, but, so I would tend to disagree that there's not a local connection, regardless of what side you put it on.
And Bavaria is where, can you hover over?
Bavaria is right here.
Oh, it's there.
Yep.
Yep.
So you
these are,
have,
that's the section we're talking about.
so in
I
this,
was going this way.
so the red, this is a little bit wrong, but we've got, the thin line red, this should be green, no, that should be red. Thin line red is done. So here's the rec center, so we have it all the way here, up into Christian's part of the woods, all the way in these neighborhoods. Because the only way really these people can get downtown is taking sidewalk along County Road 11. So I think that there is some local connection that has to be taken into consideration too, so.
I think people, first and foremost, would like to see some trail connections actually get put in by the city, number one. And as it relates to Barry, we picked that as number one. I think people would like to see one put in, whether it's east or west, first and foremost. I think you mentioned, I thought your points were, I agreed with your points, that there are advantages to the east side from the vantage point of some of the actual residents we're dealing with, and dealing with, you know, some of that proximity of property and dealing with that part of it. There is another advantage to east side in that there's the Highway 5 trail corridor, which is not in there yet, but it's coming in. That's going to be, is that on the north or south side, Ann? That's going to be hooking up with,
South is the proposed route.
yeah, the south. So that means that if,
So that would be here. So as part of the study, here's your intersection at 5.
And
And so here's the trail on this side with turn lanes, with pedestrian that would go down to the Arboretum entrance here.
and you can get all the way down to Chanhassen.
You'll be able to get to 41. There'll be an underpass at 41.
And there, also then you're dealing with, as it relates to if you want to go across Highway 5, if you're on the east side, I'm sorry, if you're on the, yeah, if you're on the east side,
You'd have that connection still. So you'd have that would take care of your Madeline Creek.
yes, but if, let's say that trail is on the east side, you can go right across and then you're going to be hooking up with the trail that can take you all the way down to the regional trail.
Yes.
Correct on that?
Yep.
And then on the south side, if you go all the way out of town, that trail is running on the east side.
Correct.
who's putting that trail in that we were just talking about?
This would be improvements, future improvements. It'll be a group effort of MnDOT, Carver County, and the city, so ultimately any trails would be paid for by the city.
Now, I guess I go back to the cost again, and again, we won't have the exact amount, but it's just seems to me from, as things have been described here, that in the long run, it's still gonna be cheaper to do it on the east side and probably have fewer landowners to deal with, so it might be easier to get done than on the other side. And I don't know, I just think that, like you said, eventually it's probably gonna be on both sides, but it seems to me if we wanna get this done in any timely manner, that dealing with fewer landowners is gonna be an easier process and a quicker process than if we went on the other side. And I understand, Christian, I understand your point too with the existing, trails on the other side there. But to access the new one, they would just have to cross Bavaria, and they'd be on that trail. So it's not a total lost cause there.
Judy, you haven't had a chance to weigh in?
Well, I live right there, so I think I can visualize the west side. Again, we're talking the residents, and to carve out into their property, I think is going to be difficult and it's going to be expensive. East side, to connect to, 78th Street, you'd have to cross Bavaria. You know, if you were walking or riding a bike, you'd have to, and that's getting to be an extremely busy place. It'd be difficult to get across the street, but it's doable. But bottom line, I think east side probably makes more sense because you've got Arboretum property, and then you've got the city buildings, and a lot fewer. When you get further down, there's residences, again, like between 82nd and 86th on the east side. Now you're talking residences again, but
But they're built so far.
right, there's a little more. On the west side, that distance between 78th and 82nd is pretty, there's big trees, I would think it'd be pretty difficult to get in there to,
On the west side, are there privacy issues? I'm just thinking of
yeah.
a residential area, even sidewalks. You put sidewalks on one side of the street or the other. And as our development has grown, I've changed my mind 3 times on whether I want the sidewalk on my side of the street or the other, because it's great for convenience, but then you have to plow, and then you have people walking through your yard with their with your dogs, and I'm wondering if that factor comes in.
But I think the houses are set back far
Here's a
enough
pretty
that
good,
it's,
here's a pretty good aerial of those houses that don't have,
Okay, so you're not gonna be encroaching in their space per se.
I mean, this is probably the closest one. There's some, landscape here that would block it.
That one could, a couple
That's
of
on
them.
the
Yeah, this
west
first one.
side.
This is west side, yep.
That first one on the corner where your cursor is right there, up a little, that one and those two look like, that's getting closer.
Yep.
All those are
And
garage.
there's a lot of trees in here.
yeah, it's pretty,
This one has
pretty
a
well.
lot of trees.
The trees are what make it look like there's actually some separation, and makes it look like there's more easement from the road than there is.
It's like dogs, are people that keep them on or off leash. I mean,
The other thing, if we get to upgrade to urban or not, and there can be definitely a case made for both of those too. But I think back to the council discussion about Marsh Lake Road and about saying, hey, if we could take, X 1.4 million, we could do, instead of doing one trail, we could do 2. So I think from just reading into the council thought process, at least one argument can be made is, hey, if we could, do this for half the cost, maybe if you took the full cost, if you didn't do the urban section, and then maybe we could, for the same amount of money, you could do 2 potentially. If I'm making my point clear on that or not, or am I just
I hear
confusing
your
you?
point, but I keep coming back to the thought that we never had 1.4 million.
No, I agree, I'm not
that
trying
we-
to open that up
Part of the
again.
reason we didn't go with it is because it was just cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I'm not
So we
trying to
don't-
open
so
that up again.
I get the concept. It's like, oh, well, we didn't spend it there, so let's spend
Mm-hmm.
it here. I get that idea, but we never had it to begin with.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to.
No, I hear
bring it
that.
back
No,
to
that's-
that, I'm just trying to say, hey, there's a real cost consciousness if we can we only have so much money to play with, and if we
Exactly.
can get our biggest bang for the buck. Might have been a better way to put it.
Okay.
Well, the east side, you could do rural, and then the west side do curb and gutter. or at least in certain sections. Is that weird though? Because there's 2 sections on the east side that are urban and then just cutting over to rural. Does that happen a lot, or do you continue on with the,
It happens.
okay. I don't know, from Madeline Creek, I mean, can you see yourself pushing your 6-month-old daughter or grandson across Bavaria Road to go walk down 200 yards to 18th and then pushing them across at the next crosswalk where there might be a roundabout going in now, which roundabouts are great for traffic, but for any sort of pedestrian traffic, they're absolutely terrible. I mean, that's so I'm looking at it as a Victoria resident who lives in these neighborhoods. Am I going to cross the street twice to go to the path that's on the other side of the street and then to go back home, or am I just going to skip it? Or are we building this for the residents that are south that want to get north? I don't know. I think we're building it for both, but I look at it from the non-bicycler viewpoint. You know, the person going out for a mile-long walk as opposed to a 30-mile bike ride.
We have a lot of runners that are running there too.
Yeah, my wife runs
Yep,
that route all
and
the time.
there's, you'll have to cross one way or another.
Not if it's on the west side. You could just
No,
stay
well,
there.
if you want to get further south, you're going to have to cross down at 86th Street. And you're going to have to cross at 5. So you're still crossing at certain
Yeah.
locations.
You are.
If you want to go somewhere.
86th isn't like crossing Bavaria, though. 86 is like pretty lightly traveled street, more or less.
Then you have the issue of crossing versus traveling on a road, which some connections today require being on a road. I mean, it's a little bit of what we've talked about when we look at, you know, limited funds, there's no question about it, but it's almost, we almost have to take a look at it in a 5 to 10 year time frame of how many dollars are we planning on spending? And if it's $5 million, you know, path 1 could get us 2 or 3 trails or 4 trails, some number. Path 2 could get us 6 or 8 trails. And maybe not 100% what we want, but if we patched 80% of our gaps, we'd be.
All of the, and I just want to say this, there's a reason that those gaps are there, and none of them are easy to fix.
Right.
You have private property issues, you have rural section road issues, and they're all going to run in anywhere between, and in one case, some of the trails, you're going to pay $500,000 if you want to acquire the land. Yeah, if these were easy, they'd all be done. We wouldn't have these gaps. None of them are easy, that's why they're gaps. So, yeah, we could go down the road and pick out one that I think is going to cost $500,000 and pick that one off. Another one might, you know, these are running $500,000 to $1 million. They all are. So pick your battle. You know, we went through the process of ranking the gaps so we'd have something to move forward with. 1 through 10 or whatever they are, ranked them, came to the committee, you provided input, got a final ranking, took it to council. So, I know we could go back and forth on this subject all night.
We pretty much have,
And
yeah.
if we want to get anywhere, we need to move forward. We can't debate what. If we're going to go back to the starting board, I'm okay with that, but we won't get anything done.
Yeah,
So I would, in the spirit of that, I'd say since Bavaria is ranked number 1, and now we have 2 choices, a higher cost and a lower cost. I would lean towards probably the lower cost option. So that, well, that's, I guess, that's where I'm at right now anyway.
The question is, what's the lower cost option? I mean, we don't, what's on
Yes.
paper here isn't the final cost. That's
No,
just,
these are rough estimates.
and we haven't included anything for retaining walls, for, you know, other things aren't in there, so we don't really have a true
These
cost.
are really high-level costs of looking at what we have, what the cost is going to be to upgrade based on a trail number that is grading pavement, and that's it.
In principle, I agree with you, Claudio. I mean, to me, whether it's the east or west, it doesn't matter. And we should do what's most cost effective. But I don't know what's most cost effective with the numbers that we.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
if you were to tell me that west was less expensive, where I'm thinking right now, I'd say let's go west. But let's get there.
It's 435,000 west, 500 east.
So the difference between
The low
rural, I keep
will
coming back
never be that one.
to these questions about rural versus urban.
Hang on, guys, one at a time.
If we go to urban, we talk about upgrading to urban, are we actually talking about upgrading the road itself?
You wouldn't upgrade the entire road, you'd add curb and gutter.
We would, but so we would be improving a county road.
And so the county road is only on the north, the city owns the road from 86th to 82nd. So we're hopeful, in our preliminary discussions, we're very hopeful that we can do it all within the existing rural section road.
So the number that we're looking at is either 545 ballpark
Yeah.
or 435?
Yeah, that's our first starting point, is we try to do it within the existing road and the existing right-of-way.
So the county road is only from 82nd to 86, is that
No, the county road is from 5 to 82nd.
to 82nd?
And then it's a city road
From there.
from 82nd down to 86th. The county turned that back to the city years ago.
Okay, oh, I didn't even realize
Yeah,
that.
yep. When County Road 18 went in, because County Road 13 went from 5 all the way into Chaska, but when County Road 18 hit, that was going to be their main thoroughfare, and that section then was turned back to the city.
So your hopes is that we should be looking at the lower of these two numbers?
I mean, that's the bottom line cost, but again, until we get some more survey work done and engineering work, it's sort of like the Marsh Lake Road thing that took forever. You have to lay out the trail, determine if you have enough right-of-way, what we need to do, if we need to get some temporary grading. So it does take a bit to get to that final number.
The retaining wall, that was going to be on the west side and not so much on the east side?
Yes.
And that retaining wall is not built in on the west side? Bid here?
Neither of those numbers have that, but the likelihood that we have less on the east than on the west will be true. Because we have a little more urban section road, curb and gutter.
Yep.
We have, when I showed you the properties, wrong, oh no, this is the right way. There's quite a chunk that looks like this along from 82nd down to 86th versus one that looks like that on the west side.
Say that again.
So we have more of the urban section road along the east side versus this sort of condition on the west.
if without knowing how much that would add to the west side, because if you just would say they're apples and apples, and we're saying, hey, we want to go with the most cost effective, then we would say, let's do west side because it's going to be 100 grand less. But what we don't know is how much that retaining wall stuff would increase.
Well, there's potential retaining wall, and in this sort of condition, you have to fill the ditch, put pipe in it, and then put the trail on top of it, because you can't put a trail down in the ditch.
No.
So when you start doing that sort of improvement, whoopsie doodle, your number is going to go up.
100,000, I go quick.
Yep, based on.
So
Marsh-
when we look at these numbers, when you start putting pipe in the ground, your number goes up. If you don't have to put pipe in the ground, your number stays down.
How much more will it cost to get a good, solid estimate, or I don't know if you have to go to a bid on both sides versus just one side?
We're probably looking at double the cost.
And that cost is about
I'm gonna guess 50 grand, if not more, to get.
per side?
It should be in total. I'm hoping we can do it for 25-ish, so we're looking at about 50, but again, it's gonna slow the process down, so we might as well not even look at doing any grant work this year, or, because when we get that number, and it's not a number that would go to waste, you'll have what you need for the future, because it's already done. The cost will go up the longer you wait to put it out to bid, generally. But it wouldn't be a wasted cost, but you're gonna slow the process down, which, that's fine, as long as I've got a reason that I can say.
Look,
So, Ann, do you have a preference? I mean, from you, I mean, seems like we're all over-
My preference has always been the east side.
yeah,
Because I know that it will be less challenging. Both sides will be challenging, but it will be less challenging to get it done in the next council strategic planning document.
I'd like to make a motion, or we can do this a couple ways. I'd like to see a show of hands of who prefers which. And, who prefers the east side? And I'm not.
Are we
Probably
taking,
good if we hadn't asked Ann this question.
are we taking into consideration costs or not?
All of it.
All of it.
Okay.
And there is some unknown though, because we don't know. But if you look at all we're going around and around.
Before
There's a lot of considerations.
Before I
here. We
raise my
talked
hand,
about 'em all.
on the grant, it's a maximum of 150,000.
Correct.
There's 800 and some odd thousand
In the pot.
in the pot, and historically, do you have a sense of how big a grant is?
So this is a very similar grant that we used to put towards the Highway 5 trail that runs to the Arboretum. And at that point in time, the pot was $250,000. I don't know what the overall pot was back then. It was 10 years ago. But we received the whole thing because this connection is huge when you look at not only local but regional in scope. It's huge. So I think it would score very well.
Okay.
Do you need a
Do
motion?
you guys want a sense of the,
I'm an east guy then.
I'm east.
I'm in east.
Beast.
West.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
I think from what I've heard, it sounds like east would be more like cost effective and just like would get done faster. So I would go with east.
Okay. Do you need a motion?
Tom, do you have any thoughts? You've heard an awful lot of talk and discussion.
I just thought I would defer to you guys and just let you guys throw it out there. I've got to make a decision later on.
He gets the real decision.
So,
So the motion on this is to go for the grant. I mean,
And
obviously.
it should, after I had done it, it also needs to be a side. Selection of a side, it needs to be in there too. Sorry to say,
selection of a side.
east or west.
Oh, didn't we just do that?
Well,
He has to formally do it.
yes,
Oh, yeah, oh, I hear you.
yes.
Is that our chairperson or?
Can we get we have a motion to, on this east or west?
I would make a motion that we would recommend to the city council that we submit a grant and proceed on the east side of Bavaria.
Ann, is it all right that we put these as together?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Judy seconds. Any further discussion?
Is there, a question. So you're expecting to get the grant back when, Ann?
So the grant is due by, I believe it's March 27th. And as we move forward into the usually you're notified early, like sometime in the spring, summer. I think it's Mayish. Once we get a little bit more into the details of the project, I'm going to debate probably and consider if we should wait for a grant application in 2021 if we're not far enough along with the details of the project. Because they like shovel-ready projects, and so we're going to try to make it, but March 27th is right around the corner. So I need to do a little more deep dive. But in order to submit a grant, I have to have council approval and a resolution to attach to the grant for that. So we're somewhat on a time frame to get it done
And
for
that has to be-
2021.
So you need that approval by when?
I plan to take this to the council on the 10th of February.
10th of February. So if
So I've got to do a little more digging into the grant application itself, because it just came out first part of January.
and then you need more information on
yeah.
costs too?
I think I'll be okay there, because the grant is only $150,000, so that won't be a problem for the application itself.
We've got a motion on the table. I do want to ask one clarification on the motion itself. Does the motion speak to urban or non-urban?
No.
Neither.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion or comments?
So if we vote, our vote then gets passed on to the recommendation to Ann and the council? Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
the motion's to make a recommendation to the city council.
And then the city council ultimately will debate it and can either accept it, modify it, or,
Correct.
Not listen to it at all.
Right.
They are the ultimate decision maker, yep.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Wow. We're running a little bit behind, folks. Next item is,
It's no action required. Wasserman Lake Park.
Wassermann Lake Park, no action required.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring you up to speed. The council approved tonight at the in December of 19, the council approved the 90% plans for Wassermann and also the bidding. They approved the boardwalk bidding, the oak work removals and pruning, and then additional boardwalk for the fishing pier. The boardwalk came in about $100,000 less, with the caveat that they have to put helical piers in, and when they don't know what the depth will be. So at least we've got a little bit of wiggle room there. The oak work came in good. Bids are due for the remainder of the park on February 16th. So the Park and Rec Committee will be looking at that likely either the 18th or whenever the next meeting is, in February, which is another Wednesday. And then the council right away at that second meeting in February. Our goal is to stay on schedule for construction to begin in the spring, completion by the end of the year of 2020.
Exciting. Thank you.
It is.
I think we should, thank the council too for, taking the recommendation to, move forward with the park and do it all at once as well. I know it's difficult with, dealing with all the things that they need to deal with, but I think it was a wise move to do it all at once. So thanks.
I am very excited about it. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to our city. I'm very much looking forward to it. One thing I would like to ask the board and Ann, and something to consider, I think we have to come up with a creative name for the park, and I hope that gets discussed further down the line, maybe not
It's
tonight.
actually right coming up.
Oh, is it next? Oh, I didn't even read that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I should have read the.
No,
should have
you're
read
right on target.
Okay, cool. There you
And-
go.
And I echo the comments about the support of the council and including your support, Tom, and especially your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, it's going to be wonderful.
So we're ready to move on, Ann?
Perfect.
Okay, so our next topic is the actual discussion about the official naming of the park.
I should have read the whole.
And, well, no, there's certain circumstances, timing for you. And included with this is our policy and procedure as it relates to naming and parking facilities. So we've been using the, I guess, the working title, which is Wassermann Lake Park.
Correct.
But that isn't necessarily the official name of the park.
Correct.
And Ann is asking us to come up with a recommendation that can be submitted to the council for
Correct.
an official name of the park.
Correct.
And did you want to add anything to that, Ann?
Sure. So, yes, we are in the beginning stages of working on a signage package that will be bid separately from the park package, but it led me then to remember that there were several people on the Parking Rec Committee and also several people on the council that asked about the name. So we do have a policy that we have utilized over the years, and again, the council reserves the right to name or rename any park or park facility in the community, but the Park and Rec Committee is generally asked to make a recommendation to the city council on an official name of a park. And again, I know this group and the city council have thrown out some things, and so I wanted to bring it back to you guys to make sure that as we move forward with the sign package, that the park is what you want it to be, the park name. And I have provided that for you, and
Ann, have you been getting feedback from people on a name?
I have not gotten really any feedback except for from the Park and Rec Committee and the City Council. We have met with the public for a long time, and nobody has said, oh, it should be this name. They're just excited for the park to get here. But certainly the group could recommend to the council to go out for voting. We could do a website poll. I'd like to, if they were going to do that, I'd like to have a pretty fast turnaround, and take that, have a couple different names selected by this committee, but then have a fairly quick turnaround, and then take it right to the city council, because we are working on a limited time frame for a final name, so.
How about Wassermann Lake Nature Park?
I know one, thank you, that's on the table. One.
Overwhelming support.
One thing I know that word that's been used, or it's come up, has been the word preserve. And I think two words probably I've heard, nature and I've heard preserve.
That's right, nature from our last meeting. Somebody brought it up, that's why.
Doesn't mean either one of those should be in the name of whatever, the park. But those two words have been brought up.
I think that the word preserve sets it apart from most of our other parks, and I think that emulates a little bit, talks to what this is. This isn't just a normal play park. This is a back to nature park, and I like the word nature. I like the word preserve, but I think, I really do like the word preserve.
Why don't you count it, why
I
don't
think
you
it's
combine
incorporated
them?
in there.
Wassermann Nature Preserve.
I jotted down 5 or 6 words, and it's, I think we're all on the kind of the same page, but it was nature or natural, explore, exploration, explorer, wilderness, area, and almost wanting to not even use the term park anywhere in the verbiage at all, so that people say, what is this thing? As compared to, it's just another park up at Lake Wassermann.
Oak Savannah Preserve.
Oak Savannah.
Forest Preserve.
Judy, you have a thought?
Forest Preserve.
Forest preserve?
Yes.
I would say you throw it out to the website next, or just say, we're taking applications or ideas, and then kick those around, put out the top 5 the next time after we vote on them. Whatever's voted upon as the number 1 goes to council, they approve it.
I don't think we have enough time to do
Christian,
that.
Christian, what would you, if you were the one that said it's up to you, Christian, what would you say?
John Carlson, Wassermann Lake Preserve. No,
After your donation.
There you go.
$2 million donation, 2 million.
I would probably go with something along the lines of Wassermann Lake Preserve or Wassermann Nature Preserve would be the two that stick out to me right now. But
So you said Wasserman Lake Nature Preserve, and what was the other one?
Wassermann Lake Preserve or Wassermann Nature Preserve. I don't want to get too wordy.
The 2 out of the 3 folks that mentioned it used Wassermann. 3 out of the 4. I didn't mention Wassermann, but I saw the Wassermann seemed like a good theme. And then
Well, and what we're going to is an oak savanna versus a mishmash of non-burned out woods. So we're trying to take it back to where it was before. So that's why I was kicking around oak savanna. I don't know, does that creek have a name? We're re-establishing a creek that doesn't have,
No, it's just part of the Wasserman.
I mean, we could call it Teller's Nature Preserve or something along those lines as well. But
I like Wasserman because, really it's on Lake Wasserman, and it's, it's just a part of the identity of of what it is. It's, it tells people within the community and externally, sort of where it is, and it's an identifying component. If I'm taking liberties here, if there's enough interest in the word preserve and Wasserman, you could call it Wasserman Preserve, but, then the question of, you got words of lake, park, and nature. Did I hear someone say they'd prefer if it didn't have park in it?
my thought was just
Okay.
not just to make it Wassermann Nature Preserve. That sounds pretty good. Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve. What was yours again?
I had Wassermann Lake Nature Park, but I kind of like the preserve name in there too. I like that. I do agree with you, John, that I think having Wassermann or Wassermann Lake in there is probably important for people to know where it's at. If you're, I mean, it kind of describes where it's at, and then use the word preserve or nature.
Well, and I think that that's one of the keys to this whole project was that the lake and the water was one of the reasons why we're here today. So food for thought.
Judy?
Well, all the words, I like Savannah too. That's a neat, I mean, a neat kind of a concept. I think it would be intriguing, a Savannah Preserve, Wasserman Savannah Preserve.
Tom?
I just hope that we send a couple, 1, 2, maybe 3 options to the council, and, but it's up to you again. But my thoughts are that I hope it has the name preserve, and I can go with many of the options that you have already thrown out there, but I kind of leave it up to you guys, but throw out a couple of different ones.
Yeah. So that would be a good thing to do, is maybe give 2, maximum 3, maybe suggestions.
Right.
And I think there's enough, several people are interested in Savannah, so that could be one of the options. Would be I'm not sure what that is, but
Wasserman Lake Savannah Preserve.
Wasserman Lake, Savannah Preserve, okay,
Was what, and that's what I think you said, Judy.
Yeah,
okay.
Wasserman Lake
yeah.
Nature Preserve.
Wasserman Lake Nature Preserve could be it.
That's the other
Second
one.
First, when I heard Savannah, it kind of turned me off, but as I thought about it, you could do a lot of things, a little plaque at the site and talk about what we did or what was being done and why it was being done.
Well, and how it's being evolved.
Yeah.
It could tie into the educational component of the park too, and where we're going. Any thoughts?
I thought the idea of including the savannah sounded cool and just like it would be intriguing for people, where nature or just preserve would be kind of generic.
Savannah is a cool word, but I just Googled it. And the definition I have here is a grassy plain in a tropical and subtropical regions with few trees.
So
We'd have to put Oak Savannah, I think, in there.
So, right,
Wasserman Oaks, and we're cutting all the oak trees
Who
down.
kn-
people are going to say.
Not all of them.
What the heck?
Not all of them.
Okay.
Well, I guess we could recommend them. People won't have to choose it. Is there a third one we want to give people? Do we want to just, we say Wasserman Lake, do we feel strongly that we have to say lake? I wasn't here in the early days, and you mentioned something about that's why we were here. I missed that. You could, maybe after the meeting, you could fill me in.
Christian?
I don't think you need lake in there, but
Okay.
I,
Christian, you got to put a mic.
I don't think you need lake in there, but
So,
Wasserman Oak Savannah Preserve's too wordy. Wasserman Savannah Preserve isn't accurate.
what isn't accurate?
Would be Wasserman Savannah Preserve would be inaccurate. I don't know. I kind of like Wasserman Lake Preserve, the WLP. I think I've,
Or just, yeah, cut the other adjective out.
I don't know.
How do they describe the parks? Was it interactive?
We have, I mean, it's a combination of, I mean, it's more nature play or natural resource-based play. There's certainly the Oak Savannah component to it. There is the water and lake interaction component to it. The outdoors, the natural resources. So there's a lot of those components within the whole park area that, what does nature preserve mean? What does preserve mean? What does, reserve?
Yeah, preserve, not preserve, reserve. No, is it preserve?
Preserve, yeah.
Preserve.
Preserve.
If you actually, and I did look this up before the meeting, there are a number of, parks is a very common thing, and preserves are used actually quite a bit. Sure. But in Victoria, everything is a park. Right. So that would make it very unique for us. And if, so I think one of them should be Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve, and you could use the lake or not. I think that could be one option for them to consider.
Is Savannah still in the running?
Yeah, well, I think there's been enough interest expressed.
And what did you say your last one was? Wassermann Lake?
Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve, and you could take off the lake, but, or it could be Wassermann Lake Preserve. I think if he just presented Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve to the council, if they ended up wanting to take off lake or nature, they could,
So
Just throwing that out, just,
I mean, we don't have many more than 3 or 4. It's Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve, Wassermann Lake Savannah Preserve, Wassermann Lake Preserve,
Or Wassermann Nature Preserve.
Wassermann Nature Preserve, yeah. And they're pretty darn close.
Wasserman Environmental Preserve. The preserve at Wasserman Lake.
That sounds like a golf course.
Or new development.
It's the preserve at St. Michael, it looks like, is a retirement community.
we'll call it the Christian Scientific
Research
Resource
Center.
Center or something.
Research Center.
Okay, is that, you have 4 down?
I have 4.
Okay.
And I'm going to read them back to you, make sure that I have them right. And if we want to, in the interest of then passing it on to the council, not supplying them with 4, but maybe 2, if we can narrow it down a little bit. I have Wassermann Nature Preserve, I have Wassermann Lake Preserve, I have Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve, and I have Wassermann Lake Savannah Preserve.
There's too many words.
I'm a Wassermann Nature Preserve.
That's what I like.
That's my number 1.
You like that too? Judy?
Wasserman Lake Preserve.
Nature Preserve, Wassermann Nature Preserve.
Nature preserve.
Tom, you did the eyebrows.
Yeah, I like that one too.
No, that's fine. Throw out a couple of them and throw them to council, see what they think.
WNP.
So if we have,
WNP.
so if we
Going on
have,
down.
so if we have Wasserman Nature Preserve, but I think Tom's suggestion is a good one that we've given, we make sure we have another, let's give them at least one more option. And Ann suggested we have 2 as well.
Before.
Mary, did you,
We're cutting it down though. We've got Wasserman Nature Preserve, I think.
Yes,
So now
that's
we're
one.
looking for one more if we say we want to have.
Wassermann Lake Preserve, Wassermann Lake Nature Preserve, Wassermann either Savannah Preserve or Wassermann Lake Savannah Preserve.
Wasserman Lake Wildlife Preserve. The Arboretum at Wasserman Lake.
Okay.
Wasserman Nature Center.
which would you pick, Mary?
Judy?
Judy, I'm sorry.
I don't know, I'm just looking at Oak Savannah's on the DNR's website. That kind of covers what Wasserman Lake is, and might be, as we said, an educational tool that people say, what is Savannah? Is that just where the?
Yeah, and just so you know too, as part of the signage program, that's going to be a huge component within the park about the Oak Savannah and the education and the history with it. So that will be part of the signage program.
Yeah, it's be kind of a interesting, as opposed to just calling it Wasserman Lake Park, which we've already X'd out.
I'd throw in Wasserman Savannah Preserve then.
Okay.
But that just,
You have to put oak in there, though, otherwise they're
Savannah
gonna be the
Preserve.
tropical, whatever Tom looked up there. I mean, there's a difference between,
global warming.
It talks about
there's a
Oak
difference.
Savannah restoration in the Minnesota Valley and Oak Savannah, Minnesota DNR, the reclamation of oaks along shallow lakes, critical habitats.
I'm not as big a fan of the Oak Savannah because I think that if it's kind of having a component built in, I just think it's kind of confusing. But if we want to give them, some options and have one that includes that, because there does seem to be some interest here to have that name used.
So if somebody said, what do you mean Savannah? Don't you know that's subtropical? Oh, no, in Minnesota, it's associated with, you give them the spiel. Because it's not a total descriptor, it's a name. And if the theme is gonna be, if there's gonna be a lot of that throughout the park, memorialized somehow so people know it, it's not with signage and verbiage and that, it'll be pretty obvious when you walk away from it and say, no, I know what a savanna is. And just don't tell anybody that's from Florida.
Okay, so where are we at right now then, Ann? What do you
I have Wasserman Nature Preserve,
Okay,
and then I either have Wasserman Oak Savannah Preserve or Wasserman Savannah Preserve.
I think you gotta keep the words down. Do you really want Oak Savannah Preserve?
Yeah, it's just, we're just throwing
Want
out
that?
names,
I
whatever.
mean, is there enough interest in that inclusion? I wouldn't put it in, but who wants it in? Who wants that one as an option?
Doesn't matter.
It could be a third option, but Ann only wants two and she's kinda gets cranky when it gets.
I'm open.
Okay,
That's
guys,
why you guys to
we gotta
make a
we gotta
decision.
fight through this, okay? So,
I'm reading names off of the internet of parks and preserves near us. Big Oak Preserve. Took that from Big Willow Park.
That tree's coming down next week.
All those oaks are supposedly staying up. Not really.
I think that we need to keep Wasserman in.
Wasserman.
And I would suggest that Lake be be considered, because when in our partnership, and it maybe doesn't mean anything, but it does. When we looked at the partnership with the Watershed District, it really was making improvements to the water quality of Wasserman Lake so that at some point, people will be able to swim in it and use it as a recreational lake.
yeah.
So I think, that's an important part of this whole park, and what we're doing is making, not only is it going to be in Oak Savannah, but that Oak Savannah is going to help the cleaning of Wasserman Lake. So I like the Wasserman Nature Preserve.
I think we have a second option, Wasserman Lake Preserve. have Wassermann Nature Preserve, Wassermann Lake, Nature Preserve.
And
then
Wassermann Lake Preserve.
Council could change it, or we could to park, but I think we really are trying to say we want to do something different.
Wassermann Lake.
If you guys are okay, we could have those two, and then I guess it's up to the group here if you want to kind of get that Savannah in there as a third option.
What are the,
And I
so,
defer to
so
you
what are
guys
the
on
two?
that.
One is
So Wassermann Nature Preserve and Wassermann Lake Preserve are the two that I think we've got, and then we're working on a third with the Savannah piece.
And do we have any signs in the city that have 4 words to them? That you can think of for parks that have 4 words?
No,
like
it's
a lot, but I
it's the
like the
it's
four.
probably the piece that most everything is named after the
Neighborhood.
neighborhood. We don't have anything quite this unique.
I mean, I'm just trying to picture it on a sign. Is that too wordy with 4 words?
Personally, I think 3 is a good,
Okay,
Yeah,
but,
it gets to be long.
that is long, but I was just curious.
So what was,
Wassermann Nature Preserve and Wassermann Lake Preserve.
is there enough interest here among getting a Savannah? Because that's what we're really talking about right now. That's what it's boiled down to.
It's,
I thought Savannah was really good, but to Ann's point about what some of the objective is, it's more than just the Savannah. So that, nature encompasses everything. Wassermann Lake is the body of water that started, we all agree that preserve should be at least where, and we know Wassermann should be in it, so. I'm willing to go with 2 or 3.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion that if someone wants to make a motion for an extra one, then they can make that motion. But I'm going to make a motion for Wassermann, and you can amend it if you want. That's the other thing you can do. But I'm going to make a motion that we have recommendation of 2 names for consideration at least, Wassermann Nature Preserve and Wassermann Lake Preserve. That's my motion, if anyone wants to second that.
I'll second that.
Any discussion or amendments? Going?
oh, good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I got a 4-word park for you, though.
All
Not in Victoria.
South Lake,
Oh,
Virginia
that's right. There you
Shores.
go.
Okay,
South Lake Virginia Shores Park.
hang on. So is there anyone against that?
No.
Okay, so those 2, now, to run this in the appropriate manner here, does anyone else want to make a recommendation for another name? I didn't hear a motion, any amendments. But, so, I think those are the 2 we're going with, unless you got 1, 2, 3 here, if you want to make any other suggestions. And then, the topic of giving residents an opportunity to weigh in if they'd like to, and, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think with these 2, I think we're okay. Let the council make that decision.
Yep.
Are you going to just give them the 2 names, or?
I will provide some background on it. Like you guys talked for 50 minutes on naming a park.
This is being recorded.
It's an hour and 15 on east versus west.
Yeah.
Yeah, she might have it in there.
Well, these are very important things, so thank you for that, but yeah.
It's a-
No, I will certainly provide them some additional background on it.
We'll be watching.
If there was interest in the term.
Preserve. Yeah.
Was of interest. People did not want it called park and that kind of thing. Okay, all right, well, we're on 6.2.
And I think that one could wait till the next meeting.
Okay, how about 6, which is.
And
Pilot Trail
and
Wayfinding.
Lions, I just wanted to provide you that, the TKDA was selected as the firm. We started working on some preliminary design work. Construction is planned for the fall of 2020, and we have an estimated budget of 35. And I can't remember if I showed you guys these pictures or not at the last meeting. But just to give you an idea of the condition of the parking lot. And this year it was like this for much of the season, because there's no sub base below. It's all,
Well, I was one of the
Clay
people.
soil.
Yeah, I was one of the people that thought it was kind of a waste, and I've already had 3 people come up and say that's awesome that you're getting that done and getting it paved. So we went the right way.
Mind you, I've been working on this for 12 plus years to get it paved, so.
Well, congratulations.
We had cars stuck in here this year. I mean, it just, with the bad winter that we had, it really was a long spring and summer. I mean, these were taken, I think, in like July. And we still had these conditions.
And Mankey Lions Community Parking Lot. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to bring you up to date on that.
Thank you, Ann.
We're being recorded.
I think we get a lot of compliments, council and staff, once that's put into, completed.
And then so that's all I had on that. Just an update, but I'll bring back 6-2 for the next meeting.
Okay.
What was 6-2?
The pilot trail wayfinding project final report. Say that a couple times.
Okay, and then we're moving on to other business, which, there's no action required. Some articles from Ann and, Recreation Center membership report. If there's anything that you'd like to share on that, Ann, very briefly.
No, we're the membership reports kind of gave you from a full year, of check-ins, and then just the month of December. I thought I'd share the pickleball when we started talking about pickleball. So we have pickleball there a lot, and so last year, our total of pickleball players was about 3,500 total pickleball players for the year. We didn't start tracking it right away in 18, so nothing to compare. But we are seeing a significant increase in pickleball and pickleball requests for courts too. So, yep, just some information for you. We keep growing. So,
Well, place is always busy, that's for sure. And it's a wonderful facility, and if residents do not know about the free use of the walking track in the winter, that's quite a free service to have available. Our next meeting is Wednesday, February 19th at 6:30 PM, here again at the City Council chambers, and then the meeting in March, and thereafter we'll go back to our regular third Monday of the month.
correct.
Third Monday of the month. Is that correct, Ann?
That is correct, unless the city council decides to have an extra meeting on that third Monday, then we'd have to make some adjustments. It happens occasionally, but not too often.
I apologize for having this meeting go so late tonight. This is a record, I hope, not a good one, but I think we needed to have that time to talk about the naming, because that's very important, that's permanent. And so I think that was good. And then I know we spent a lot of time talking about Bavaria Road, but, there's tough stuff, and it takes a lot of time to vet it out. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.